listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is May 25th, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Sunday?
Oh, Spencer, hello. I am doing well, it's been it's a weird kind of a week because it's like holiday weekend in the U.S. It's kind of this summer kickoff kind of weekend, so my WoW week has been like super compressed. I packed so much WoW into the first couple days of this week because I knew I wasn't gonna have time to play later on. So it was like all or nothing this week, and we had some new stuff come in with Horrific Visions and everything like that, which we'll certainly get into in this episode. So it feels good to just get a bunch of stuff done quick. That's kind of where I've been at, and it ended up being also a really slow news week as a result of the holiday in the US. So we definitely we have some stuff to cover, but we're sort of waiting on the rest of the .5 events to roll out. We have one more coming with Dastardly Duos in a couple weeks, and then we'll get into .7 before too much longer. But right now it's like, okay, well, we finally got our visions, so this is our thing to do for the next month or so.
Yeah, we got visions, and obviously there's been a lot of notation about, hey, be sure you get all your masks this week if you can, because next week there's going to be different masks potentially, so we'll see what's happening. So we'll talk a bit about visions this week. I don't know. I have opinions. I'll save them for when we talk about visions. But yes, I'm glad you all are having a good holiday week down there in the U.S. and that everyone is getting their WoW time in when they can. I have, let's see here. WoW this week for me was some Mythic Plus. I'd have done 4 keys so far. I haven't done very many. And we did a heroic raid early in the week, just like a pug raid with a group of friends and whatnot. So I got all my full heroic clears in early, so that's all done as well. And outside of that, I've been doing a ton of WoW time outside of Horrific Visions, which I'll save until you've gone through your raid stuff. So how about you raid-wise? What have you been up to?
So I knew it was going to be a 2-night raid week. I am not even going to be home tonight, and I figured people would have stuff they wanted to do over the holidays. So weeks ago, I was like, there's going to be no raid Memorial Day Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a 2-night week, which means, our goals are basically just to re-clear stuff that we've killed. So what we ended up doing was a heroic skip to Mugsy on Tuesday. I didn't know how many people I'd have back, right? So I had a mythic roster for Tuesday, and I'm like, we're going to try to kill everything that we can kill tonight. So I didn't want to waste time on One-Armed Bandit because we could do that with fewer than 20 people. So we skipped a mug. We did Galley. It's getting to the point where Galley just doesn't have a phase 2. Because we got the 12% now, in terms of the healing and damage in the zone this week's rep bonus. So it's like heroic Galley, we hero at the pull, and he's at about 50% before the ads come down. So then he just kind of skips right to phase 3, which is lovely. It's the smoothest end boss re-clear I can basically ever remember. I just need to split the group into odd evens for left side, right side in phase 1, and that's it. Yeah. So that's really good. We blasted through all that, and then we had to shave 2 people down for Mythic. Pretty smooth. Cauldron is becoming a really smooth re-clear. That was a fight that was taking us a couple wipes, but now we're getting 1 or maybe 2 shots on it. So that's great. Rick is a little bit more challenging, and there's also a more of a random element on that fight that can be kind of frustrating, but I was just like, let's use Vantis runes. Our scribe just makes them incessantly. We have stock of them. I'm holding a 25 plus stack of them or whatever I had from weeks ago when the last time he gave me any. Let's just use them because we're not going to look at sticks this week. Let's just make sure that we clean up Rick quickly so we get some loot out. And it was a couple pulls. I don't know how it wasn't a lot. It's becoming a better re-clear, of course, as we get more practice and more power. So then we ended up, just kind of wrapping it up super early for the night once Rick was dead. Ended up doing 4 keys after raid that night. And then Wednesday night came back, had 2 through 6 bosses heroic. I brought the druid in for that so I could get some, round out some loot, round out some vault on the druid. And the druid's 665 plus item level, so it's not like some strain, he pretty much outgears heroic raid anyway at this point. So, Wednesday we blasted through those 4 bosses in about 45 minutes, give or take, and then 4 more keys. So that was the 8 keys for the vault done. Druid vault nicely situated, mythic reclears dead. Probably could have pushed it a little bit more because we were killing stuff so efficiently. Like, we would have had time to do like Styx prog or whatever else, but sometimes it's just not the vibe, It's just not. I don't get the impression that it's not just me. I don't think it's what other people on the team really wanted out of the week either. So I think it worked out great. It was fun to just blast the stuff, and I'm foreseeing a lot of really chill reclear weeks for the summer, which is perfect, man. Like I think that's what kind of people want, Like, let's get together, hang out, kill some bosses for a couple hours, and then get back to whatever else we got going on.
Yep.
We'll cut Sundays probably, pretty soon entirely, and then we could just hang out and do summertime stuff. So nothing wrong with that. I'm really pleased, and I mean, I can't imagine, like, we're still going to get 6% more raw damage and healing inside the raid, in addition to whatever other little optimizations and item level we can squeeze out. Plus, I think most of the team probably didn't have their corruptions this week. We don't have the greater corruptions yet. That's going to add some as well. We get the belt coming in .7, which is probably going to be good outside of Delve. So, like, what are reclears going to look like by the end of this season? It's going to be comical, I think, which is not a complaint, because once you've kind of crested the hill, man, you just want to come back and knock that boss down every week.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me is we're at that point where we're progging on Galley right now. That's what we sort of our last week in raid on Sunday, Monday was we killed Muggsy on Sunday, and we had Monday to prog on Galley, and we're getting all the way through phase 1 and to the transition, so that's helping a lot, especially since we had a very silly raid night. We had a raid night where a lot of people were just goofing around and having a good time and chatting it up, and we still made prog, so that was really good. I think we just needed to blow off steam after doing Muggsy for so long, because we just, for whatever reason, that was one of those fights where if something goes wrong early, then you just wipe and you start over again, and something goes wrong early and you wipe, and it's, not necessarily always the same people, so it's just everyone sort of has their turn making mistakes, and you just kind of have to roll with it. And so when we finally got Muggsy down, it meant we moved on to Galley, and I think we just had a silly night, but we got to see enough of that fight that hopefully this week, we see Galley die based off of what we're seeing with other people's prog this week or next week, which just means that we're in a situation where we're almost at farm. And that farm mode is like something we're all itching for, I think, of just being able to, like, one night clear. Well, first of all, we'll have our first night back through, which will be rough, I imagine, because we haven't seen some of these bosses in months. And then it'll be, obviously a one night clear eventually that just ends up in, hey, let's pop in. Maybe we do the skip, or we kill specific targeted bosses, and we are out of there and done in a night and done for the week. And, people aren't feeling like they need to run a whole bunch of Mythic Plus, or they have to run whatever it is, because they're just maybe getting sockets for their gear or whatever it is, or they're just done gearing their character. And so it's like the whole time demand for WoW drops substantially, and they can kind of enjoy their summer. So that's what I'm hoping for. That's why I was looking at that. Oh, okay, if we see the next raid tier come out in early August, which is what I think the timeline's going to end up being, that means we got like a month and a half or 2 months of like solid, relax, chill lockouts. That'll be really nice. That I'm super excited for that. That's on my list of things that I enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm up to 681 item level now with all of the crests and everything, with turbo boost and with all uncrapped crests and all this stuff. I got a Jaster Diamond out of the vault, which is really nice. Although, man, I don't need these other 2 chips literally at all. There's like nothing for me to spend my second 2 chips on, which I guess is good, right? If they came in as bad luck protection and I had good luck mostly, I needed them for 1 item, then I guess I can't really complain about that. But
that was me in Shadowlands. That was me in Shadowlands when they first introduced it.
Yeah. At 680 plus, it's just like, dude, the game feels so much different. Like, 12s feel like, I don't know. I don't even know what to compare them to. They feel like 10s, but easier because there's no affixes at all. And so you're just so far above the tuning. I ended up, unfortunately, timing the 2 13s I needed for 13 resilience this week. I didn't I didn't want 13 resilience, but the crew made me do it. They were like, whatever, we're going to get it. Dark Flame, ironically, was the last one that I needed. So they were like, all right, let's do it. So I now have 13 resilience, but like 13 is really also like, they're a little dicier on the timer, but they really don't feel hard in our where our gear has landed. So that's great. I mean, I feel like, whatever we can say about the chips and everything aside, like the turbo boost is incredible. Like the power is the ceiling is so high compared to the tuning of this content. And it feels great to get some kind of real benefit from doing all of those keys at the outset. I mean, at this point, I don't think I have anything else left to upgrade. So I got to pull some stuff out of Vault. I'm not fully myth tracked out. So if I get some Vault luck, I still have a little bit more item level I can squeeze out. But I finished the Mythic Mog set for Warrior for this season this week, which was awesome. And
Nice.
Once I have a Catalyst charge I can play with, I have a belt ready to go to finish off the Heroic set. So that's pretty great. So yeah, that was sort of like Tuesday, Wednesday, let's get everything checked off the list for the reset for the week for Vault, get set up, get the power. And then, I spent a fair bit of time doing Horrific Visions, which is honestly, it kind of feels like riding a bike. There's some new elements, but overall, like I kind of remembered all my old routes and some of the little nooks and crannies to get into for some stuff. I haven't been grinding super hard because we can't get all the quality of life upgrades and stuff. So it's like, it's just not the time for that. I don't think, because it's just not like your time investment will be paid out a lot higher as we get farther in.
Yep.
And I will say, I think it's pretty funny that they had an interview with the game director come out the Friday before this feature went up, sort of a mea culpa for the time gating. And then you can't unlock the entire tech tree for Horrific Visions. You get 1 week's worth of upgrades at a time for 4 weeks.
Yep.
You have to appreciate how silly that is. They backtracked on the cosmetics, which is nice, but like, yeah, I'll do my weekly stuff, just make sure I'm caught up, and then I'll take a look at grinding out stuff that I want to do a little bit more seriously. I do like we'll get into it a bit later, but I really like the idea of the tributes. I think that's a cool addition. So that was really nice. And I actually did max out a couple of the tributes already, and I didn't even feel like I was trying to do that too hard. So that's a cool feature. It's fun to have something to grind on, and that's something we used to talk about a lot when we had more kind of grindable angles or whatever you want to call it in the game. Like, because we both loved doing that, once upon a time, and they cut down so much of that.
Yeah.
Horrific Visions was like a more grindable thing than it is in this iteration. I'm hoping, I don't think they're going to do it, but I'm hoping they just say, you know what, unlock your tech tree, go knock yourself out. We waited a month after patch for this feature, go play with it.
Yeah, Horrific Visions were eventually a more grindable thing because at first there was just so little currency you couldn't actually run visions all that often. But yeah, it eventually got to the point where like every week you could run them on multiple characters and run it, pretty intensely, and that definitely created that grind feeling. I don't know. This go around for me, Horrific Vision stuff this week, I sort of dove in, reset. I spent about 2 hours in Horrific Visions. In that window of time, I'd sort of unlocked doing a full clear, so I'd gotten the first mask unlocked, and I'd done gotten my first enchant. I think I bought some transmog or something on top of that, and then that was it. Like, I was just sort of like, okay, I did that. That was my Horrific Vision stuff for the week. I don't have a draw to go back in. Similar to you, the tech tree was locked, so I was like, this is just going to get easier and easier every week when they unlock more and more of this tech tree. So let's just toss this thing aside, and I will go back to that in maybe a couple of weeks' time when I know people are getting their better versions of the enchants and everything's happening. Like, then I'll look at it again. If getting the higher end enchants require you to have been running it every single week and unlocking all of the masks every week, I think that'll be a very silly way to do it. But if they choose to do it, then they choose to do it that way. By that point, we'll have finished Prog anyways, so the likelihood I'm going to use the better enchant is so incredibly low inside of Raid during Prog that there's just not a draw to do it. I got what I needed to get for Prog for this week, and I'll just leave it alone, and I'll come back to it at some point down the line. So that's kind of where my mind is at. I did have the riding a bike feeling that you talked about. I also very much almost like within the first 40 minutes was like, yeah, I still don't like these. Still isn't an enjoyable experience. Yeah.
There's like something cool about them, but man, you had to do them so much in BFA if you wanted to stay current that like they became unfun after a while for sure.
The thing I enjoyed the most about Horrific Visions this week was that going in on my 680 item level boomkin meant that I essentially was just blowing things up and could pull, whole rooms full of stuff and just blow it up. And that felt good when there's like, hey, current relevant content I'm supposed to do where I feel really strong in. That's great. This feels really, Diablo-esque kind of fun. And this is great. But then I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to start slapping masks onto this thing and it's going to become a challenge. I'm going to be back at that situation again at some point, I'm sure, where I am waiting on my cooldowns to come up before pulling certain packs and having to plan out what that route is going to be for pulling certain packs. And, that will eventually become very old hat as well. And it's just, I don't know, to me, it's a system that I've already gone through that old hat loop with. And so like, I literally could go back to my weak auras, like previous saves, because I have them to go back years, that have all of my like routes and like the old weak aura stuff that was in there for how to do Horrific Visions. I can go back and grab all of that if I wanted to and like basically relive the experience if that's something I wanted to do. It's just, I don't know, it's not speaking to me on that level. I think there's a lot of great cosmetics attached to it, so at least there's a draw to keep players going in and doing that. I would like it more if there was a reward either for, essentially an unlock system where you could just grind it, like you said, where the tree was unlocked, you could just put in the effort and unlock the whole tree and have some serious fun with it. That to me would be neat. Or if there was hey, the first time you run Horrific Visions every week, you get a big reward on a character, right? We're going to make the currency account wide, and we're going to allow people to get a big reward the first time on each character they run it. So we're going to encourage people to essentially, if you have alts, to run them on multiple characters the first time, get a whole bunch of currency, buy up all the stuff that you want to buy up, and, do the system the way you want to do it. That to me would be also a neat way to go about it. So I don't know. It's it is what it is. It's in there. I'm sure some people are really enjoying it and diving in. I know there's one person who has reportedly done a 5 mask so far this week. In time.
Wow,
completed
that's
one.
Pretty hard. Yeah,
and put the effort in
the
for
amount
it.
of our sanity resistance and all that. Yeah,
there's a limitation, obviously based off of class and spec for those sorts of situations, because certain classes and specs are just going to be better at Horrific Visions, just like they were previously. And I haven't gone in as Resto Druid, but I'm tempted to go in as Resto Druid and just see if it's actually effective at all, because I very much feel like this is still geared towards a DPS spec thing. And sure, you can go in as a tank, but you will not be as good as if you went in as a DPS. I know that there was also a lot of reports that came out about using the follower versus not using the follower, where using the follower increases the health of every single mob in the dungeon by some large extent. So whether or not you actually want to use the follower or not for some people is a pretty big deal. The one thing I will say that is in the benefit of using the follower is if you die while you still have an orb left and you have the follower following you, the follower will res you, which it used to be the orb, I think, would automatically res you, which I think was part of the old tech tree. But I don't know if that's how it still works. I just have been told that the follower will actually res you this time, which is pretty neat. So that's something there. Obviously, we'll have more information later in the episode because we're going to have a whole bunch more to talk about this week, including Horrific Visions, because that blog post came out on Tuesday, which was the weirdest time for a blog post to come out.
We sort of lamented last week, man, it would have been nice to have that like by Friday last week or something, but hey, that's kind of what I expected at this point. So,
all right, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the World Quest bonus event, meaning the Sign of the Emissary buff is up, increasing reputation gains from quests and that's just from World Quest by 50%. I don't know why I felt like I had to roll that into the PvP thing where it helps with 2 different things, but no, it just increases the reputation gain from World Quest by 50%, and there's a quest to complete 10 of them, which grants you 2,500 reputation to the major faction of your choice. There are weeklies that you always want to try and complete if you can, while you're still maxing out those reputations down in Undermine. So you can head down to Undermine and do your side gigs quest and your Urge to Surge and many jobs handle it, reduce refuse sell. At least be sure that you're picking up like which faction you want to get rep for the week. At least do that every week so that if you are happening, to do something down Undermine, you're at least gaining something towards a faction of your choice. But it is choose one week. So if you go outside of the inn in Dornegal, you will get the choice of something to do this week, whether it's Severed Threads pack stuff, Awakening the Machine, running a particular dungeon on normal or higher, world quests, which would be ideal. If the world quest one syncs up with the world quest, that'd be amazing. Delves, world bosses, theater troupe. It could be any of those things. So, it could also be the Undermine Explorer one where it is just do things down in Undermine. There's like, hold adrift in your car 10 times and, kick a discarded can and that kind of stuff. This is all things you can do. So this is one of those choose one weeks for folks who are looking to do that. Hopefully it syncs up with World Quest because that would just make it a lovely experience for everyone.
I hope so. I feel like World Quest is a choice basically every third week when this rolls around. So hopefully that is also the case this week because it's what you do 5 or 6 world quests or something.
6, yeah.
So it's 6. So, you're going to do the world boss, right? So that's 1 as long as the quest functions for you.
Yep.
And so, you do 6 for your weekly, for your spark fragment and all that. And then you already got 60% of the weekly event for the bonus rep done. So yeah, it's a really nice kind of time saver. Sometimes we get these like the Delves one. If you're just not a Delver, man, you're just not doing that. You're not going to accidentally do that, and it's a bit more time consuming than doing, especially War Within World Quests, which I feel like are mostly super fast. So, that's what I'll be on the lookout for. Hopefully, World Quest will be a choice. I'll grab it, and then just double up with the weekly, and you're most of the way there.
Yeah, exactly. And then we also have the PvP quest for the week, which is the Cooking Impossible, where Nomi is back. He wants you to bring your most dangerous pots and pans, the Valley of the Four Winds, for a brawl in the kitchen. And this is 2 teams trying to make the best soup. And the best soup, as we all know, contains the most ingredients. So basically, you are trying to rush and gain as many ingredients as you can and get them into your bowl of soup, your big pot that's cooking soup or stew. And Nomi is there cooking away at it, and you can disrupt the other team's kitchen. So if you happen to go into the other team's kitchen, you can stop them from turning in ingredients. You can, sort of debuff them from being able to actually complete their tasks and objectives. And you can go out in the field and steal their ingredients. So there's lots of things you can do back and forth, and lots of little fighting that happens. Overall, this is one of the more fun brawls to me. This is a very brawly brawl. This is, the intent, in my opinion, of the brawl, and I also love Valley of the Four Winds, so it's a great setting for it. So overall, this is a good one. Check it out if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. Super fun one. Definitely has its own identity compared to some of the other brawls that are like a twist in this familiar battleground. This is it's its own thing. It's in its own setting. It's got its own sort of objectives and elements to do. It has sort of a PvE sort of vibe to it because you could just be sort of collecting stuff, and not really engaging in combat as much, or you could be maybe just disrupting the other team from turning in more so than actually trying to fight them or whatever. So yeah, it definitely has its own, it's a much different thing than it's Warsong Gulch, except you can turn the flag in at any time. Yeah. It's a much bigger twist on a PvP mode, which is why I think it's one of the better ones. It feels more special, I think.
Well, it's that concept that we saw with Plunderstorm, right? Where it's like, this is a very different version of the game that you're playing. And so Plunderstorm obviously went to the extreme. It would be a very extreme version of a brawl. But in this case, it's it's a little bit more attached to Warcraft, while at the same time being something that's very different from your regular play and your regular PvP experience. So yeah, it's a great brawl. That's why it's a brawly brawl. That's the way I'd certainly put it. All right. As far as a little reminder for folks, we're getting to that point where people are like, hey, do I have all my spark fragments? I just leveled up a new character. What's the best way to get like a vault? Or I'm maxed out and all I'm trying to get is sockets and I don't really want to run a bunch of Mythic Plus. The world events still exist. They're still there. You can still do Theater Troupe, Awakening the Machine, Spreading the Light, Severed Threads Pack, you do the World Soul Memories. All those things still contribute to your vault, as well as still reward you with a little like reward chest, which when you open, you can get your catch-up sparks from. So those are all good things that you can go out and do. Spreading the Light's still silly easy of just going around and turning in fragments. If you still have hundreds of those, You're not even that hard to earn now because you can blow up a lot of the mobs there with the amount of item level we all have. So it's a great one to go out and do. Same thing with Waking the Machine with the new advanced speed mode on that. You can do the whole thing in like 7 or 8 minutes now, comparatively to the like 15 to 20 that it used to be, where you just queue into Awakening the Machine and just blow stuff up very quickly throughout all those different phases, and you get a little reward chest at the end, and that can get you some of that catch-up mechanic that you're looking for sparks and all that kind of stuff for characters. So be sure you're doing that. And again, like I said, contributes to the vault. So if you're trying to get 3 vaults for the week to get a socket, easy way to do that too. So just keep that in mind. PvP.
Good for like Valor Stones too.
Yeah, very
which
good
you
for
may
that.
need if you're burning through a lot of crests. Especially Awakening the Machine is great for that. If you do 20 waves, which is very simple and fast now, like you said, you get those, the 4 or 5 chests or whatever it is to bust open.
Yeah.
And all those crests you can trade up. Like obviously it's at a premium, but it adds up. It ends up being power. So I've been back to doing Awakening the Machine, on the Monk and Druid every week for a coffer key and just for some Valor Stones and stuff like that. And it's smooth. It feels great. It's like what we always say, man. That like 7 to 8 minutes is a sweet spot for that kind of activity, I think.
Yeah, for me, it was about sockets. Like I sort of got to that point where it's like, there's not a lot more I want out of, for one character or another out of my vault, unless I'm running like a whole bunch of keys and I'm trying to like get a particular reward. 1 key a week is fine. But to fill out those other 2 vault slots after running 1 key, it's like I could do some raid, I could do this, I could do that to try and figure it out. But the least time consuming thing for those characters is like, all right, I'll do an Awakening the Machine, I'll turn in fragments, and now I have my vault or whatever, right? You do 3 world things and suddenly you have your vaults. You're like, all right, great. So that's a really nice way to do it. So just, keep that in mind. Doing those world events are great. And obviously delves are the other thing that'll get that stuff done fairly quick on your own. So you can run, level 1 delves a bunch of times, and that just fills out your vault really quickly. Whatever you need to do to get those sockets is a really nice thing. Okay, Mythic Plus this week is Pulsar. We're back to Pulsar week, hopefully, based off of rotation. I still feel a little like hesitant and unsure about these things. But anyways, if it is Pulsar, we're going to have crystals that spawn around players. These things will rotate around those players, these like orbs, and you have to go around and collect up all of your friends' orbs, and for each one you collect, you get Mastery and Leech, and you basically want to be sure you collect all these up, because if you don't, then they will increase the damage that the enemy mobs deal to you and reduce the damage they take. So you want to be sure you're picking these things off of your friends, and if you are someone who has a Pulsar on you, be sure you're moving towards your friends. There's going to be certain fights where this is a bit trickier. Last boss of Rookery always comes to mind, where there's people who are just out on their own, but hopefully they can kind of come towards the middle when this particular affix pops, and you can turn in with your healer or whoever's standing in the middle of the room to be able to pick those up off of you, and you can get zoned back out to your other area to have the crystals happen. I'm sure there's going to be bad overlaps regardless, where you can't do that necessarily, but yeah, it's it is something that is sort of what's the best way? Proximity based. That's the term I'm looking for. Proximity based with your team. So if you can be closer to your team, this is going to be a lot easier for you. So yeah, Pulsar week.
Yeah, I think Pulsar is, it's going to end up being probably the affix that I will interact with the least in this expansion, right? I mean, assuming that they all carry over or whatever. Like it missed season 1, and then I've spent a nice chunk of season 2 at this point, and probably I'll spend the rest of it above the level where you have these. So my experience with it is pretty limited, but I will say one thing that I sort of noticed with it is, you mentioned last boss of Rookery. I would also say like King Mechagon are good examples. Like sometimes there's just that one that's going to be out there.
Yeah, it's
probably not worth like eating a death to try to soak one of these. Like if you get 4 out of 5, like probably just say, okay, we can deal with this. And even in Rookery, you probably have like 2 pairs of 2 people and 1 person off to the side or something, so that's okay. You make a good point about like, make sure that you're putting yourself in a position for people to get your orbs. Sometimes, like as a tank, I would find myself sort of dragging my orbs through somebody.
Yeah,
because I might be in sort of like, I'm like in an awkward spot or something, I'm like behind the group or like kind of offsets. Like I got to kind of wiggle to get my orb to go through where somebody would set up.
Yeah, you position yourself so your orb orbits into somebody else as it rotates around you. You're like, all right, it's going to be about there. We'll just wait until 3 seconds later it hits them.
Yeah, it's just stuff like that is what you have to kind of keep in mind. Overall, I mean, I think it's a pretty decently easy affix to deal with. Most of the time when it pops, like your group will be somewhat close together. It just mathematically, right, as you go through a dungeon, it's a lot better than what it replaced, where we had the orbs just spawn all over the room and then like move in towards the mobs. Like you have so much more control over this. So I think it's pretty decent. It's a level 7 tyrannical week, which is a little bit harder if you're still trying to climb the ladder. But overall, I don't really think. I think where they sort of ended up with the Zaltas bargain affixes in this season is like they feel relatively fair. They don't feel too hard to deal with for the most part. You do have to pay attention to them. You can't just straight up ignore them, but they don't ask so much of you that you're maybe doing something you shouldn't be doing just to react to the affix usually, right? So
yeah, if everyone's doing their part.
I think okay.
We just came we just came out of healing week, and when I was so I did 4 keys and I healed 3 of those keys, and in 2 of those keys everyone was dispelling themselves, and the 3rd key not everyone was dispelling themselves, and you notice the difference, right? Like there's a notable difference of here comes the affix appears, you hear a pop 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 as like everyone dispels themselves, and then you dispel whoever's left, and then you're done, and that's it, and the affix move on. It's great. Like that feels fantastic. The keys where it's like affix pops, no one does anything, and you immediately dispel someone. You're like, okay, I have 1 more dispel left, but otherwise I have to heal the rest of these off. So I'm going to pop these cooldowns when there's no damage happening just to try and heal this off of people is a very weird experience to do. So yes, when everyone's doing their job, I think these affixes are very, they're very fitting of things.
Don't have the Old West high noon showdown over if people are going to participate in the affix or not. Get in there and participate in the affix. But yeah, this is one where maybe the only thing about that is with this affix, there may be times where it's like not totally safe. Like King Mechagon Magnet, dude. Like if you're not in a good spot to grab an orb off of somebody during that, just let it go. Don't kill yourself, but do pay attention to the orbs in general.
Yeah, exactly. All right, we have the Glowcap Festival coming up on May 27th. We're just 2 days away. This is one of the most nostalgic festival things we've had. This is one of the first micro holidays we ever had. I think this was in the first wave of micro holidays that went out. This was the first micro holiday / event that took place that favored healers, because healers were able to actually complete quests faster in this, because part of the objective is to heal up little Sporogar mushroom folk and help out the great Fishu that's out there. And these folks were injured, and you could heal them either using bandages in game or with your healing spells, and the healing spells were more effective. And so I was overjoyed back in Burning Crusade Day, going back to this place in Burning Crusade Day, and being able to actually like heal up these little Sporogar dudes and just like complete this quest really quickly was a very exciting thing. So anyways, it has a special spot in my heart. That's all I'm saying. If you want to go back and visit the mushroom folk back around Sporogar and participate in the Glowcap Festival, it's a lot of fun. You get a lot of Sporogar reputation by participating in all the events around there. So if it is a rep you're still looking for, you can get some every day every day. You can get some for this day by doing Glowcap Festival and enjoy that.
Is this the only micro holiday that has like a permanent rep? Bonus to your character in the actual game? Like it is legit.
It's one of them,
like live real Sporogar rep. It's not some thing that's like some buff that you get during the event. It's the reputation bar in your character tab. Yep. So that is pretty cool. I don't think I ever finished Sporogar rep. Back in TBC, I was not like a dedicated enough player to be like maxing out all those reps, especially with the way that you used to have to
10
grind
daily quests a day. Choose which faction you will support.
Right, like that is not how I really approached the game for most of TBC. So like I don't have these reps maxed. I don't think that I'll be doing Glowcap Festival on Tuesday, but it is happening. It is pretty fun. So if you never checked it out before, it's probably worth a look for a few minutes at least.
Yeah, man, there's heavy nostalgia with that. That and the farming the lobsters back then was the other big thing that everyone ended up having to do to get all the food they needed for their characters. I remember that as well very clearly. There's a lot of BC. My brain is like, as much people talk about rose tinted glasses, we were in that expansion for a long time. And my brain is like very fixated in on these really core memories to my WoW experience that happened in Burning Crusade. So yeah, there's a lot of nostalgia there for me, and I recognize that not everyone has that, and not everyone played back then. But for me, it's very there in core. All right, Darkmoon Fair. It is kicking off on June 1st and running till the 7th. So we want to give everyone a heads up. The next Sunday, you will be able to participate in Darkmoon Fair, which means that you have the extra knowledge points that you can gain for your character, the extra reputation and experience gain from riding the rides, the races and stuff that are there for achievements, the dance that's there for achievements, all the tokens you can earn towards buying your dirigible and transmogs and stuff like that. The fish you can fish up out of the ocean to be able to have better Mythic Plus runs for faster mana regen or for more reputation gain. They even sell in the auction house for a lot because people use them to like cycle reputation and max out their tokens or whatnot with Darkmoon Fair really quickly. So there's a lot of stuff to do Darkmoon Fair. Be sure you're participating in it. It kicks off on the 1st. Yeah,
it's pretty nice with if you still care about the cartel reps and all that stuff, just tack that on. I'm still working on, I'm almost done with my second one. I do want to max them out just because they're there. I'm going to go do my weekly stuff anyway. So got to remember to pick that up. I still need, I think I'm down to my last like 60 blacksmithing knowledge points. So we're getting closer. And so this is an extra 3 or whatever. So, that adds up. Just, I always make sure to at least get out to the Darkmoon Fair on the main for that stuff while I have points to earn. And yeah, I just gotta remember to that it's there before I start doing my lap on Tuesday. Not this coming reset, but coming up. Because that it's only 10%, but it adds up.
As far as hotfixes go for this week, the Death Knight Unholy, they resolved an issue where certain bonuses could be retained by despawning and respawning the Death Knight's pet. That's a weird one, but yep, someone figured that one out, and so they resolved that. As far as Retribution Paladins go, they fixed an issue causing Avenging Wrath to not function properly when talented into Radiant Glory, and that's been resolved as well. So if you were someone who was very aware of that, hopefully that got fixed for you too. And with Warlocks, for Hellcaller and Destruction, so for Hellcaller first, they fixed an issue where Vile Taint was would trigger Blackened Soul more times than it was intended. So that has been resolved for you, which I feel like that's a bad thing. But I don't know. I don't know Warlocks that well. Maybe Vile Taint was really bad for you, and so and Blackened Soul was not something that should be triggering as many times. And Destruction, they fixed an issue where Crashing Chaos would persist after the start of a Mythic Plus run. I'm assuming that means people were doing a precast, and that is something that is not supposed to. It's supposed to reset on start, so that now resolves your precast. You're not doing that anymore. Horrific Visions, they fixed an issue where if you destroyed a Void Fire Death Cycle that Hamar, the Devout, is riding too fast, it would fail to go out of control and let you bring it out with you. Oh, okay. So you could just ride a motorcycle out of the dungeon. Yep, no, I guess that's a problem. So yep, no, that's not a thing. And Tori's item no longer require the achievement We Have the Memories. So that is another one. They removed that one.
So that Tori is the one that has all the cosmetics.
Right.
So this was...
Oh, yeah, because all the cosmetics... That's right. On Tuesday, they all required We Have the Memories. You're right. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Which, felt pretty bad. I
couldn't buy anything off that vendor. I was like, all right.
Right, because you had to... I think originally you had to get the entire tech tree done to unlock.
I think that's what it was. It was
cosmetics.
Like 5 weeks. Yeah.
Like, especially again after the interview that Ian did with PC Gamer, like, I don't understand how this went out like this. There's still stuff that I really do not like about it. Like, the tech tree should not be time gated the way it is, and also, there's weapon vendors. There's not just cosmetics. There's also legitimate like items that you can use this season. Yeah. There's a veteran, a champ, and a hero weapon vendor, and you unlock their inventory by completing higher achievements based on your masks and stuff. Those achievements are not account wide. So if you get the achievement to unlock the veteran weapon vendor on a toon, you can then not switch over to a toon that hasn't done it and buy the veteran weapons.
There's no catch-up gear, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like it's character locked for the vendors, which is it's just like It's just a whiff. Like, there's just no reason for it to be like that. I mean, the hero weapons maybe, I mean, champ stuff is pretty accessible. You could get it out of Bountiful Delves every day.
Here's the thing, right? That to me, design wise, that makes me think horrific visions are supposed to come in at the start of a new patch. That's what that says to me. It says to me okay, horrific visions and this system that they designed for loot was designed to come in at launch of a new raid and a new patch cycle so that people could progress through the system over the weeks and slowly earn their way towards getting hero gear. It's not designed to come in at the end of a patch cycle when everyone just has hero gear raining on top of their characters and they can massively upgrade gear, blah, 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 and are in a situation where this has come in and you go, no, this is all gated. Like, oh, okay, so it's gated and you can't have access to it. Well, when was this supposed to come out? I would just ask that question of was this designed and intended to come out at the start of the next season? Like, is this a season 3 thing? Or was this a season 2 thing that got bumped backwards because it wasn't ready yet? Like, it doesn't feel like it fits in a really good spot when it comes to how they're doing those systems, because that's the miss. I think that is the miss. Like, it makes perfect logical sense as a system to come in the way it is if it comes in at the start of a season. This doesn't make sense at the end.
Yeah, right. And it would give you more time, even if it came out the week of .5 launch, then it's like, okay, you have like maybe a month or so to ramp up, and then you can start kind of dismantling some of these, these barriers around stuff. But
right.
It is in a weird spot where it's like, yeah, it's a little bit of power, and like you want, if you're like any kind of a min-maxer, do you want your greater head enchant? Of course you do, but is it make or break? It's absolutely not. So
yeah,
I don't understand why this isn't more of a free-for-all. Like, Horrific Visions in BFA was the thing we did for basically like the entire last year of the expansion.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was the centerpiece of the end of BFA of 8.3 or whatever it was. It was you had the rotating N'Zoth incursions or whatever, and you were doing Horrific Visions to get your corruption, and seasons 3 and 4 kind of revolved around that as a centerpiece of like what you were doing. This is supposed to be just a little nod to it because we have all this old god stuff in this expansion with the Black Blood, and we know what's going on. I don't know. Are we going to see some kind of N'Zoth comeback or something? I don't know, but it's a nod to that and just a way to throw in some stuff to do. And then it's all locked down like this, where it's like, here's the maximum amount of fun you can have this week. And if you want to use this to gear up other characters, then you better be able to do a full clear one mask to get veteran gear, to get like LFR level gear. I gotta say, one mask full clear this week is harder than LFR. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I think they could just.
It just dropped.
I'm glad they
late.
loosened up the cosmetics. Like, loosening up the cosmetics was essential. People were just beside themselves when they logged in on Tuesday, and it's like, you time gated the cosmetics. Like, what is happening here? Although I guess you could say, like, well, they're saving people from themselves because this is the least efficient time to get mementos. And so, you're going to spend them on this now. Like, you'll have so many of them once you get through the whole process. But
yeah,
I think people want the flexibility of like, I want to do this now. I want to work towards earning this reward that I want. That is sort of the essence of this game.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because I know people who take time off from work and plan around. So like, I know someone in particular who took time off thinking Visions were going to be coming out towards the start of the .5 patch, and then found out later on, after they'd already booked the time and everything, that they weren't. They were going to be coming out later, like a month later, and that really threw off their plans. But yeah, people's play times and whatnot are pretty wide as far as a variety of who can play during the day and the night and which days of the week, and has people vacation and what's their busy season and when are they interested in WoW and when are their friends around and all that stuff. So like, there's just a lot of things that you can't account for when it comes to it. But I don't know. I think just the way that this was designed and released makes me think that it was supposed to come out at the start of a season, and it wasn't rethought or retuned for coming out at the end of a season, and that's the problem. So if they can work towards that, that's great. I think time gating any of this at all, personally, is not something that I enjoy. I think if I could have unlocked more of the tech tree, I would have just kept doing Visions. I probably would have done more than 2 hours of Visions this week. I probably would have done like 15 to 16 hours of Visions this week had I been able to just unlock the whole tech tree and plow into it and get a whole bunch of progression, et cetera, done. I would have taken the time to probably do that this week. But That's not the reality that we lived in. What we lived in is this is time gated, and I went, oh, okay, well, this is just going to get a lot easier every week. So I guess I'll just do the bare minimum and then push the system aside. And now I have arguments for both sides of that. I agree with people who are like, Blizzard is saving people from themselves and saying, hey, you don't need to do 16 hours of visions this week, and you don't need to do all that stuff because we've time gated it for you. So you only need to do a couple hours and then you're done and you can just leave it alone. I also have the thing of this might have been the week where you could have done that much more time. So like you can't win, right? Like I feel for Blizzard because they can't win with systems that are time gated versus not time gated, because there's going to be a crowd of people who are blessed for the fact that they time gated it, and there's going to be a crowd of people that are upset for the fact that it was time gated because this was the week where they had the time to do the thing they wanted to do. So, or this is where they were hyped about it or whatever it was. So like that to me is, I feel for both sides of that, and there's no correct answer in my opinion. I just think I agree with you. Cosmetics should never be time gated like that. I mean, currency gating them is enough in that situation. And when it comes to the power level of a lot of things, and we're going to talk about time walking a bit too, they need to make sure that the difficulty of the content that you're asking players to do and the time investment you're asking players to make seems fairly fair across the board when it comes to those rewards. So asking players to do something that is substantially more difficult than something like a Mythic +2 or +3, which is repeatable content that gets you champion rewards every time you go in there and do it, right? Should not be something that is more difficult than asking a player to go in and do a 1 mask or a 2 mask or a 3 mask or whatever it is that gets you that equivalent content and equivalent reward, in my opinion. I think they should aim for something that's close to a similar challenge, right? Like to me, if you're asking someone to do something that's the equivalent of doing a Mythic +10, it should be giving someone a hero piece of loot at the end of doing it. Like that just makes sense to me. And when you see disparity in that, when you see, hey, doing activity A gets me hero pieces of gear consistently and is not very difficult versus activity B, which gets me hero pieces of gear but is really difficult, you'll see people and the entire, sort of community gravitate towards the easy one and complain about the hard one because it just doesn't make sense, right? For them logically, the reward doesn't fit the task you're asking the player to do. So yeah, I think Horrific Visions kind of fall into that category a little bit, and they gotta fix that and work that a bit. And I think part of what would help a lot, like you said, is if it was an account-wide achievement-based system where once you've unlocked champion gear from Horrific Visions on your main character who might be really geared, you can go up to the vendor on your alt and you can send currency from your main to your alt and go, hey, I want to buy a whole bunch of this gear to gear my alt up. Now it's a catch-up mechanic. Now it makes sense to be later in a patch. Now it makes sense as far as the difficulty level goes because you're unlocking something that's account-wide as opposed to unlocking something that's specific to your character, even though you're not going to use the champ or hero gear on your main in that situation. You'll use it on your alts, and so it actually makes sense that it's something that's going to be more of a challenge because you're just giving an unlock of a system that helps your alts catch up. So yeah, they need to rework that a little bit. But overall, I think I mean in general, I can't say I'm glad Horrific Visions are back, but it's certainly a system that I think will keep players entertained for a period of time with the amount of cosmetics you can earn from it, and that's great. I just know for me, it's not my cup of tea, and I'm not gonna tell people they're wrong and they shouldn't do them, but it's just not my thing. So I'm not gonna. It doesn't resonate with me on that level.
Yeah, I think actually when the roadmap came out and it had Horrific Visions Revisited on it, we both kind of went, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Playing it this week, I've actually kind of had fun. I like the concept of Horrific Visions. Like I said, for me, dude, I was doing them, I think, on all 6 tanks, like weekly.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah. It was, it was too much, and it was not fun. And all the stuff you had to do around like getting the vessels or whatever it was you needed to get into them in the first place. Like the fact there's nothing like that is great because you could go in and you could just mess around. You could try stuff, and there's weird little hidden stuff. I got the Void Stallion last night. There's horseshoes in each of the 4 sections other than the Dwarven district, and so You click the 4 horseshoes, and then once you have them, you go to the forge in the Dwarven district, and then it spawns the horse, and then you defeat the horse, and then you get the mount. Like, that was really cool. And the fact that I could try like a different route and just do something weird because there's not that buy-in, right? There's no opportunity cost. You just click the button and you do it. Like, I love that. I do think like Blizzard, I feel like there's a bit of an identity crisis with the warbands thing. You know, it's like they knew they had to do it and they put it in, but the stuff comes out where they're just like, this isn't warband. And it's like, how would I do a full one mask full clear horrific vision with worse than a veteran level weapon?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm doing that.
Agreed.
Like, how would that happen? So why is the unlock for the veteran vendor not warband? Like, my warband could use the veteran weapons, maybe. You know, it's just it seems like they rip the Band-Aid off, and they're just like, sometimes they put out a new feature and they put another Band-Aid back on. They're like, this isn't warband. Nope, this is character. And it's like, man, if it was like kind of you said, if it's week 1 of the season, I get it. I get why you don't want okay, you know, you're kind of short circuiting that whole process for players, but it's not week 1, you know, and it hasn't been week 1 for a while, and you know our mains are at like very high power levels, and catch-up gear is better than it was at the outset of the expansion, but it's not abundant, you know, and this is the thing that like you want to be doing right now, right? Like, this is
it's the new activity.
It's this new feature that unlocked this week, so you're doing it. So like, if it was a way to get that gear, you know, to other characters in your warband, that would be awesome. So,
or earn that currency to buy cosmetics on other characters while you're doing it. Like, all those things are attractive about a new feature, because maybe you've done all of the reputation-based stuff out of, you know, the last patch that came out, and you're sort of done with renown, and you're done with those rewards, and you've gotten everything, and this is the new thing with new rewards. So you would run it on multiple characters to do things, but like, you're right. Like, a veteran weapon should not be a reward for doing a one mask, because a one mask is hard enough as it is that you probably aren't doing it with a veteran weapon. So then why am I unlocking veteran weapon and veteran gear? This is like the old profession thing that just drove me nuts about profession gear not upgrading and being really hard to craft, then not being a high enough item level to be viable later in an expansion. Like, I don't know. It feels very much and reads to me as a system that was designed to come out at the start of a season, and they just didn't update it for the modern times that it actually released in, which means that it isn't operating the way that it should for late in a patch. It's operating the way it should for early in a patch, and they just need to do some more tweaks to just get it into that position.
Yeah. I think it's fixable. You know, I think maybe the stuff just wasn't really considered or whatever, or maybe it was like, I mean, kind of like you just alluded to, like it was kind of locked in design wise, right? Because you got to have the stuff ready to ship to all different regions or whatever. You know, it's going to be localized and all that. Maybe now they could hotfix change some of it. I mean, it's a mixed bag for me, but overall I feel good about it. Like, I'm glad that they're there. I want to do more of them. I want to unlock the rest of the tree. I don't know that I'm going to grind out all of the cosmetic rewards, but like, I'm looking forward to doing more of it. But there's just some weird rakes that they've stepped on with it. The gearing just seems like nonsensical. Like the like the actual gear, not the cosmetics, but the power gear that you get from it doesn't match up with what they're asking you to do to unlock it and then to buy it, and it also doesn't match up with like the overall gearing philosophy in the game. So I feel like they need to, and I mean we have at least the rest of this patch where it's going to matter, so they have some time. Like, just tweak it, man. Just open the stuff up, maybe bump stuff around. Maybe it's not like veteran 1 or whatever it comes in at least like bump it like halfway up the track and make it account like. It's fixable stuff. It's just, it's kind of incongruous. It's in this spot. Like, to me, when this was coming in and I was reading about like data mining and PTR impressions of it, I was like, this seems like a real throwaway feature. I'll be in and out of here for my enchant, and that'll be the end of it. Yeah. And I'm not seeing a lot of evidence to the contrary, where like the player who is just trying to get their power, get that next boss down, get that next keystone rank, whatever, why do they care about anything else out of the system, even from like a fun standpoint? And, you know, I think there's some things they could do to make that better.
We're at a point in this patch where we've been killing a world boss for months that drops Warbound champion track gear. We've introduced
every week, guaranteed. You get a piece of it for free every week. Now, granted, you can't totally kit out a character, but you can get 3 pieces of loot for a character if you can get the mech just by killing the world boss that dies in 4 minutes, and you are guaranteed to get it every single reset.
Yeah, we're at a point where this feature coming out competes directly with delves, which reward at least a champion track piece of gear at the end. If not, if you're doing maps and whatnot, hero track pieces of gear, and additional rewards on top of that, which gets you currency that lets you buy veteran track gear, which you can currently buy off vendors. So like we're in that situation where like, okay, if you're going to release this feature, it needs to be in sync with where we're at in our patch cycle, and I don't think it fit there. Okay, let's talk about the blog post, because there's an actual official blog post came out last Tuesday about Horrific Visions and the challenges and the rewards and things that you're facing. Basically, if you're in Dornegal, there's a new quest icon pop up, and you can fly over there and pick up the start to this quest and start diving into to Horrific Visions. And right off the bat, you can't use anything other than, like, you get a raw experience. You're going in, there's no masks, there's no talent tree, there's nothing like that you invest in outside of your follower. You just go in, you do one run with just your follower person who you've chosen, if you choose to use them or not. If you don't, apparently the mob's health doesn't scale as high, so you may or may not want to use them. But yes, you go in, you do one clear. You come out of that, and they go, hey, here's this talent tree system. You can put points into this. And you're like, great. So you put points in the talent tree system that from another person who's there. All the vendors are there too that we've talked about. So they're all in that one little sort of Horrific Vision mask area, which is just above that. What do they call the big transition inside of there that goes down to the underground?
The coreway.
The coreway. There you go. Thank you. Yes, the coreway.
It's right outside the lip of the coreway there. That's where it's all set up.
That's where it's all set up. And so as you are clearing through Horrific Visions and you're clearing each district, the more district, if you do one run where you manage to clear all the districts, which I just recommend maxing out the talent tree for first, then you can unlock masks. And the masks that they sort of have put out there so far, the returning masks, are the Faceless Mask of the Pained, the Faceless Mask of Dark Imagination, the Mask of Long Night, Mask of Burned Bridge, Mask of Daredevil, and then there's the new ones, which are Mask of Vengeance, Multitudes, Nemesis. That are the 3 new ones that are out there. So there's going to be a total of 8 masks for folks to play around with. And I imagine there will be an 8 mask run at some point when people turn all of these on. And they all make Horrific Visions more difficult in some ways. You know, one makes it so that any damage you take makes you lose a massive amount of increased sanity from what you normally would take. So any damage that would normally cause sanity damage does 400% more sanity damage than normally did. In some cases, your max sanity is reduced by 50% when you turn these on. And you might be like, wow, these things sound like they make them really hard. And they do. They make them more challenging and difficult. And that's a choice you choose to do when you turn on these masks. However, obviously the talent tree helps counteract a lot of these things. One of the things you get early on is the orb system, where you get essentially 3 charges of an orb that you can put down that regenerates more sanity for you. It will regenerate only half of the sanity it's supposed to if you're in combat. So you want to try and find windows when you're not in combat to put this down and get your sanity back up and be able to survive in the Horrific Vision longer. Because how Horrific Visions work is you're going down into the, madness that is Stormwind or Orgrimmar during these Horrific Visions, and your sanity is slowly being sapped away, both by abilities as well as just over time and the amount of time you spend in there. So you have a bar on your screen that is your sanity bar. When that bar gets low, you want to use one of these orbs to make that bar get full again, and then you can keep going for longer and longer periods of time inside of Horrific Visions. There's also like stuff in your talent tree that makes it so when you kill elites or kill bosses, you get sanity back. So that talent tree does help you sort of game the system a bit more and delve deeper into these Horrific Visions as far as how they work. But the mask system isn't new. It's something that we've had for a while. And so it's something that, it's been talked about a lot with Horrific Visions. There are new things in a lot of this, and those are the tributes that are out there. This is a totally new system that they've added. The tribute system makes it so that if accomplishing certain things or completing certain tasks in each of your runs gets you a benefit, works your way towards a benefit of some kind. So, for example, just killing empowered monsters inside of there will eventually earn you a point where, while you're above sanity, you do more damage. And when you're below a certain sanity, your damage taken is reduced. And that each of these sort of benefits have ranks. So that's like rank 1 is 4%, rank 2 is 8, rank 3 is 12, right? So that's the tribute of experimental destabilization, where It's empowered by killing bosses inside Stormwind of Orgrimmar. And when you kill those bosses, you sort of complete the tribute progression, almost like it's its own reputation on a tribute. And by just doing that many times over, you earn different ranks and sort of buff that up. And so they have a variety of these tributes. They have 4 of them that you can work towards. One of them is about just killing minions. That gets you movement speed and haste, and that ability stacks just for killing minions while you're progressing through these horrific visions. Another one's for killing N'Zoth's elite minions. This restores sanity and gets you even more sanity back each time you defeat one of these elites based off of the progression in there. And then the tribute of Empowered is by collecting potions. And now potions are like a tricky thing. And this is where you're going to end up with like weak auras or a notepad or something, where certain potions are good potions to drink and certain ones are bad. In general, they all have a bad outcome towards the end of them, where they make you sick when the timer expires, or make you bounce or explode or walk around dazed or whatever it is. But there are particular potions that will just sap your sanity when you drink them. So you have to be aware of which potions do which. And so you have to be, kind of pay attention to that. But these will allow you to see tainted, like chests, particular chests inside tainted, corrupt, and lost areas of Stormwind and Orgrimmar, where there's these particular reward bags that you can open and get stuff out of. So you gotta pay attention to that as well. But tributes are worth investing time in, and this is kind of the new spin, new feature of Horrific Visions. Other than the follower, I guess, that's something that you want to pay attention to. So, Jason, how do you feel about the tribute addition to Horrific Visions?
This is actually really great. This is maybe my favorite thing about Horrific Visions coming back, is this other kind of twist on it that gives you some power, basically just for participating, right? Even if you just biff a run super hard, you're going to get some progress towards, your tributes. And the tributes are pretty powerful. I don't have Elite Extermination maxed out yet, but I do have it up to 100, and that makes a huge difference, because there's a bunch of elites as you go through, especially as you get into, the different areas of the city that have like 2 elites that you have to kill to progress the objectives or whatever. I mean, that ends up really adding up. I'm looking forward to getting that maxed out. I think I maxed out Clear Sight and Vision Hunter. So, movement speed is nice for sure. I run pretty high haste, so the haste doesn't really matter. But the movement speed, it was actually noticeable. Even go from 2 to 3 last night when it kicked in. I was like, oh yeah, I'm moving a little bit faster, and then being able to see more treasure in the various areas is great. You're in there to collect stuff, so that's really good. But yeah, I mean, these are impactful, and they are grindable. Like if you do have that kind of taste for the grind and you're feeling like I wish I could grind more of this stuff, like this is grindable. You could max all these out without any other like tech tree stuff or whatever, any time gating. So it's cool. I didn't really know what they were doing with this. I had heard something about it, but I didn't really know how it was going to work. So I've been enjoying that element of it. And yeah, like last night I was actually working on this week's episode, and so when I do that, I have my game client open so I can look at stuff, and then I've wrapped up and I'm like, let me do a couple Horrific Visions. Hey, I'm pretty close to maxing out these couple tributes. Let's get that done tonight, and that felt pretty cool. I love stuff like that. So these are, are they as impactful as stuff in the tech tree? No, but these are cool bonuses that you're going to want to take advantage of if you're in there doing this. Yeah,
it'll certainly just passively through doing the runs over and over again make them easier, and that is something that is grindable that I enjoy as well. Absolutely. Now, what's another motivation? We've talked a lot about these enchants, these runes that you're going to be carving into your helms that allow you to get certain benefits. Well, again, I feel a little bit like the system's a bit of a miss, because they sort of hit the same thing as they did previously with these rituals, where it's very DPS focused. The only ritual that I'm seeing recommended for tanks and healers really is Void Ritual, because it's the only one you get the full benefit of when you're actually going to be using it. This is something where essentially you prepare a Void Ritual, and then when you actually do the ritual, you get a stacking secondary stat buff to all of your secondary stats, and this stacks up, progressively, and you get this really nice sort of overall character boost for this 20-second window of time, while basically every second you get 71 additional secondary stats, and so over 20 seconds you get 1,400 additional secondary stats, which is really nice. It's like another flask to all of your stats. It's kind of cool. So just keep that in mind. because the other ones with Twisting Appendage and Gushing Wounds and Infinite Stars and Echoing Void and Twilight Devastation all do reduced damage for healers and tanks, which is right off the bat, you're like, these are really cool, but if they're all doing 40% reduced damage, am I really going to pick them over just the one that is going to benefit my character the most? And if the answer is no, which it is for a lot of people, especially healers, then it's like, okay, well then I guess all of, they basically went, hey, we designed a system that has 5 things for DPS classes and 1 for healers and tanks, which is just a sad way to sort of look at it. I would love to have seen a spin on Twilight Devastation where it spawned a Twilight Devastation tornado that healed players and DPS'd enemies. That would have been really cool. Like, that'd be a really cool thing, so that as it sort of spun and, went off in its direction, if it went through other people, so tanks might not want to use it because they're not necessarily, they might hit their melee behind the boss, but that's about it. But a healer standing farther back could hit everybody. Like, this would be really neat to sort of hit this cluster of players with that. It's a similar thing with Infinite Stars, where Infinite Stars calls down a star to strike an enemy. Well, why can't it also call down a star to put a shield on a player? Like, how cool would that be as well, of like 100% guaranteed gonna get value most of the time, to just have these stars falling from the sky that are just putting barriers on players? Like, that would be really as a neat concept. That would again work for both tanks and healers. The tank one maybe is more likely to land on the tank, so the tank is more likely to just get a barrier on themselves more frequently that absorbs damage. Like, that'd be a really neat thing too. So there's ways they could have spun some of these to sort of make them incorporate more classes, sort of more specs, and roles, which I think would have been neat, but they didn't. So yeah, we end up with Void Ritual as the thing that most people are throwing on their gear, and then these other ones are cool, but they're not going to see as much use as some of the others. So you'll earn your lesser rune this week if you, as I said, do a full clear of one of these horrific visions. You don't need to have any masks on or anything. When you earn your first mask, you'll unlock the ability to buy the lesser runes, and then you can just throw a lesser rune on your helm. They just cost the actual Curios currency that you get from doing the runs, so you can swap it out whenever you want to swap it out. I happen to have 2 helms, so I'm just, one helm is a DPS helm, the other one's a healing helm, but guess what? I don't even need my second helm because they all use Void Ritual. So it's like, all right, it is what it is, and we just sort of move on from there. But how are you feeling about these coming back, Jason?
It's cool. Like, I like the flavor of them. I loved corruption in BFA. It was a thing that some people didn't like. It was controversial at the time. Part of it was the way it was rolled out was a little awkward. It took a really long time to max out your corruption resistance, and so like you got more power based on how much corruption resistance you had on your cloak. Then you could add more and more ranks of corruption for more power. And that was a long tail process that lasted like most of season 3, and the effects were really cool. I had like a Twilight Dev setup. I had an Infinite Star setup that I loved, but I could only really use on like one boss because it was like legit single target. It was only good for one target, right? But it was such a cool flavor and a lot of power. These are more like just an homage to the way that those corruption effects were, more so than trying to bring them back into the modern game. Twilight Devastation doesn't scale off of your health pool, for example. It just does what it does. So yeah, like I'm just going Void Ritual. It's not exciting. It's just, hey, whatever. I like stats. It's more stats. It's a nice little bonus. Apparently these are only going to be usable throughout the rest of season 2, which is very strange, but there's a lot of strange stuff going on this patch cycle, in my opinion. So I'm just kind of rolling with it. I definitely, I want to get my grader whenever that is available. But yeah, I mean, check your class discords and check your Icy Veins guides and check your WoW heads for, what is considered optimal for your spec. I've seen some people, there's sort of this like campaign of like, no, actually, even though it's not as good, just get Twilight Dev because it's just fun. And like, I get stuff like that, but I think it's not Twilight. It's not the Twilight Dev of old.
Yeah,
it's not. It's just like it's the same graphic, But I think like if it was really fun, if it was really blowing stuff up, or it had that same kind of impact, I'd say, yeah, whatever. I don't care if Void Ritual is mathematically slightly better. It's like Void Ritual is just a clear choice right now. So unless they retune it, that just is what it is. if you have the ability to take something different and really benefit from it, then that might be fun. But it seems like Void Ritual is just the clear winner for most specs. So hey, it is what it is. It's just supposed to be a cool bonus for people that are really invested in powering up their character for this season. So that's fine. One thing that's nice is it's very flexible. Once you unlock the tier, like you unlock the lesser this week, you just have access to all of the enchants, and they cost 500 mementos, which isn't really a lot. You can swap them out. The mementos are account bound, so you war bound or whatever word I should use. So like you can just send 500 mementos to your other tune and then buy the enchant that you want for their head, which is lovely. So it's very streamlined, especially compared to the corruption acquisition of old, where like there was a rotating vendor and you had to make sure that you hit the correct cycle for the correct rank of the thing that you wanted that week. Like that was messy, and I'm not sure if that was on purpose or what, if they just wanted to keep people on the hook or if it was some kind of tech problem or I don't know what, but that was very strange implementation. This is much more streamlined. Everything about this is like, it's like a fun size version of Horrific Visions, right? Like we don't have the whole candy bar. We just have the one little square of it and individually wrapped. That's what like the learning curve is super accelerated. It's much easier to start doing masks and stuff this time out. You get, even though we are complaining about the time gating, like you do get the power faster. The corruptions are much easier to obtain and much more flexible. So it's, those are all good things about it. Like it doesn't take a lot of investment. If all you're in it for is to get your enchant so that you don't get yelled at by your raid leader, there's not much investment here, which is great, I think.
Yeah, I think it's well done. It looks like the next quest chain to get the greater ones, I mean, obviously just isn't out yet. It's the Enhancing Corruption quest, which there's people speculating will be this week that quest comes out for people to be able to start working towards earning. You'll have to collect more Black Blood Coagulate. I think it's 8 of them that you're required to get. You'll need 1,000 mementos to be able to get that. So that'll be something that happens later on to get the greater runes. But I wish if while they were going in tweaking things like, hey, this is no longer based off your max health and things like that, they tweaked some of them to work with just different roles. Like I think that would have been a neat way to go and be like, oh, well, actually there is something to think about here, right? Like that would have been neat versus just being like, well, if you're a healer or tank, take Void Ritual because that's going to be what's strongest for you. And you're not going to get enough Twilight Dev procs to actually make a difference versus just taking Void Ritual. So I think that's just an unfortunate design flaw with the whole system. So is what it is, but I do enjoy the tribute system. I think it's great. I think it's a great addition. There's obviously a whole slew of achievements that came in with this as well, and a ton of cosmetics. So it's certainly worth folks checking out. Go and check out your Horrific Visions, even if you do like I did and just do like 2 hours of it and you're like, I'm done. That's it. I've done the couple hours and I've gotten the reward, and I'm going to leave the system alone for a little while. And when I can unlock more of that tech tree and make this really a lot simpler for me, I'll do that. Like that's fine. So don't stress over that. I do think the enchant's worth getting. That part is certainly worth participating in. Okay, class tuning. We got class tuning coming up on May 27th. Augmentation Evokers. Your 2-piece class set is getting increased for upheaval damage. It's essentially getting a reduction in your upheaval damage for Augmentation Evokers from 30% down to 15%. And the eruption damage also from 30% down to 15%. So there's actually, with the recent buffs to augmentation, personal damage, this older class set has become stronger than intended. So essentially the Nerebar Palace 2-set bonus I just described has been nerfed so that people aren't wearing Nerebar Palace gear for the Augmentation Evoker in the current state. This is just a mess of a spec. Like how messy is it that the most recent buffs meant to go back and wear your old 2-piece because it was better than wearing the new stuff that's out there right now? Like it's a mess.
It's a good thing they nerfed it, I guess. Could you imagine?
I know.
If that became like what you had to do was like, actually go back and collect your Nerebar set. And
I think it was Legion, man, where Resto Druid wore the same class set for almost 2 full tiers. Like it was crazy.
Right, but at least you knew that going in.
Oh man!
What if afterwards it got? What if you had moved on from the Nighthold set, right, and then
open up the item restoration and try and get back your old tier gear? Oh my goodness!
Yeah, like Augmentation's been on a real roller coaster this season, and I'm not sure what the takeaway is right now. I don't think we're at the end of the ride yet. I guess so. We'll see.
Speaking of surprising things, Preservation Evoker is actually getting some buffs. Healing spells all increased by 4%. Healing Flame Healing by 30%. Spirit Bloom by 20%. Echo-based healing increased by 100%. This only affects the raw healing for the Echo-based healing, not the how strong the copied spells are. So you're not getting like your copied spells buffed up, but yeah, that is a huge healing buff for Preservation Evokers, who I felt like were already in a really good spot, but apparently need a little bit of love. So they're getting some. Survival Hunters, your Explosive Shot and Fury of the Eagle damage has been increased, so keep that in mind. All Frost Mages got buffs across the spec, which I still think people won't play because they just dislike the rotation. But 3% damage increase across Frost damage for mages, so just keep that in mind. Holy Paladins, Lightsmith, your Blessing of the Forge healing has been increased by 15%, and your Hammer and Anvil healing is increased by 20%. The Shadow Priest, your Psychic Link now causes direct damage to inflict 30%, up from 35% increased damage to targets afflicted by Vampiric Touch, up from 30%, so 5% buff to that. Halo damage increased by 30%, which is massive. Your Void Weaver, Entropic Rift damage has increased by 12%. Subtlety Rogues just get a flat 5% damage increase. Big buff for you all. Restoration Shamans. Your Farseer stuff is getting buffed. No one's playing Farseer. So yeah, across the board, we're seeing Farseer increases here, where your Elemental Reverb now increases Riptide healing by an additional 10%. Your Maelstrom Supremacy, the healing of Healing Wave, Healing Surge, Wellspring, Downpour, Chain Heal up by 10%. For Farseer, your Offering from Beyond now reduces the cooldown of Riptide by 3 seconds, up from 2. Your Primordial Captivity now increases the maximum mana by 10%, up from 5. Your Hydro Bubble absorption has been increased by 25%. Your Hydro Bubble now lasts 15 seconds, up from 10. So huge buffs to Farseer Resto Shaman. So I'll have to see if you guys are swapping up which hero talents you're using or not based off of those changes. As far as Warlock goes with Destruction, I don't know why they keep buffing Destruction Warlocks, but they do. So here's another big one for you. Diabolus have all been buffed, so that hero talent must have been not the one that you were playing, because Ruination now does 35% increased damage, Wicked Cleave now does 15% increased damage, Chaos Salvo now does 15% increased damage, Fellseeker damage increased by 15%, and Gloom of Nethreza now increases enemies marked by Havoc to take 7% increased damage from your single target, up from 5. So all large changes and shifts there for Diabolus, so they're trying to get that hero talent in line, I guess. Arms Warriors, your Whirlwind damage is up by 100%. Fury Warriors, your Whirlwind damage is up by 120%. And Thunderclap damage was increased by 25%. Odin's Fury damage was increased by 30%. And Mountain Thane Thunderblast damage increased by 25%. So some Warriors saw some changes in there as well. Man, that is just the PvE changes that we see coming up with the maintenance on Tuesday. So I know that there's going to be some very happy healers, especially between those those Preservation Evokers and those Holy Paladins. I don't know necessarily whether or not we're going to see Farseer come out as the new Resto Shaman deal, but that is certainly some nice changes for you all. Congratulations on your buffs.
Yeah, I like the idea of at least trying to put some shine on like the underpicked hero talents, right? Like, because you know, if you can at least narrow the gap, then if it's a preference or something for somebody, then at least they can probably do what they want to do, even if it's not optimal. So I think that's probably a good way to go. To me, like a weird thing about tuning right now is like Heroic Raid, the beginning of Mythic Raid, if you're caught up on the Renown, dude, that 12% is so huge, and Turbo Boost is so huge. It's like, what is even happening in here? You know, it's like a power level for like live game and for mid expansion that I don't really remember hitting before. It's not like Remix or something where bosses are dying in 12 seconds, but the power level just feels like it's through the roof. So like in a raid setting, like, I don't know. How do we even feel these like healer buffs, especially when nothing lives, you know, like we're not, the group is not stressing doing heroic raiding or easy mythic bosses or whatever. Like it seems like the power spike in the last patch in the last couple weeks is we're really seeing the effects of the turbo boost item levels, and we're getting the additional ranks of the Galagio loyalty. It's like, man, I don't know. I just can't remember a time where we felt as powerful against like current content other than maybe like ICC when we had the 30% zone buff, right? Like
Yeah.
the end state of ICC. Maybe it really feels like it's sort of in that level for me where we're just so strong against the raid content, except for like the very highest end stuff.
Yeah. All right, as far as PTR notes go, 11.1.7 saw some minor changes to the overcharged delves. They adjusted some tuning and some spawning, the stamina and built-in socket for that belt. So they added stamina to the belt in general, just so it actually has stam now for folks to gain that benefit. They fixed some bugs that could block quest progression as well for some players. So if you were stuck on some quest stuff, that hopefully got resolved for you as well. But yes, the overcharged delves is something that they were focused on this past week outside of their vacation time that they were taking. The pre-order for World of Warcraft's next book, Blood Ties, which is going to be written by Christy Golden, has popped up. It is now up and about. It's set to release in November of 2025. So folks who are excited about this book can certainly go out there and pick it up. I'll be checking out the audiobook version most likely at some point down the line. But this Blood Ties is an original prequel novel to the highly anticipated World of Warcraft Midnight game expansion, the second chapter of the World Soul Saga, and this is going to be written by Christy Golden. The novel chronicles the journey of Arathor the Redeemer, son of Hyexarch Turalyon and legendary Alaria Windrunner, as he embarks on a journey investigating rumors of a strange glow emanating from the ruins of the long-abandoned Legion base, which leads him to uncover more about himself, his parents, and their heroic legacy. This is interesting because they sell it as a prequel to Midnight, but it has to do with going and checking out an old Legion base. So I am curious about where this is going down the line with Midnight.
Yeah. I'm really excited about this. First of all, it's great to see Christy writing a new WoW novel. Her first Warcraft novel was like 25 years ago or something. It predates WoW, in fact. And then she was an employee. She worked in story and franchise dev for quite a few years. And then she was let go as part of one of those massive Microsoft layoff waves, which sucks because I think, as the fans, we all kind of love Christy. And she's written just some of the best Warcraft novels, just the most fun to read. Her dialogue and characterization is so great. And I am really excited to explore these characters with, through her pen. I love the Turalyon and Illyria thing from when they came back in Legion. And I feel like it's time for Arator to have kind of a moment. Arator should be like a grown man at this point, and was kind of teased sort of at the outset of War Within, but then we haven't really seen him so far. And I'm expecting that we'll see him more here, as the expansion rolls on. That's really exciting to me. Just I love that. And then of course, we're tying it into the Legion and maybe some kind of fallout or some kind of dangling thread from Legion, which, I mean, obviously that is where Illyria and Turalyon spent a lot of time, was fighting the Legion across the cosmos, right? So yeah, that's all really cool. And the other thing is this book comes out in November, and a lot of times this is straight up like they are marketing this as the prequel to Midnight. It has the Midnight logo on the cover treatment. A lot of times these prequel novels come out like a couple months before the expansion that they're the prequel to comes out. So, I've kind of been thinking that we might be seeing like a late winter, early spring for Midnight launch, as opposed to like summertime or like late spring, which would be a more traditional, window between expansions, 24 months, 21 months, something like that. This might be quite a few. This might be more like 18 months. I mean, there's only so much you can read into this, and obviously anything can change, but they lock in some of these publication dates for reasons. And so, I think this might mean, this might be a clue that we might be seeing Midnight a little earlier than we've seen other expansions. So just a lot of interesting stuff here. I pre-ordered my copy right away. Because you got Christy Golden, you got Illyria and Turalyon and Arator, you get the Legion,
the Legion word in there.
Okay, here's my money. I'm looking forward to reading your book. Thank you very much. But yeah, very very cool stuff all around from me.
Yeah. Okay, last week I mentioned we had received an email about time walking stuff from Daniel, and we didn't have a chance to cover it, so we're going to go through that now. writes in saying, "Hey guys, longtime listener, first time writer. Just wanted to give a different take on your perspective on time walking. As I see it as a change, as a good change, pending proper tuning, obviously as a caveat. As it stands now, the general time walking pug is tank zones in and runs to almost the first boss, and then you just cleave everything. Dot classes cannot even cast spells before everything is dead. If you AFK for 10 seconds, you get kicked because it's just go, 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 rush mentality. And time walking dungeons are a mess, and no one even, cares about anything inside any of them. The only thing that matters is zone in fast, zone out fast. They are zero fun, is the way that sort of they start this off. That's point number one. Point number two is making lesser geared players more resilient versus damage. I think you don't know the problem here. People level so fast in time walking dungeons that they may reach level 50 while wearing level 20 loot. So you are basically just running along, trying not to die from the Omega AoE pulls of the tank, because if you do, the group does not care and keeps running. If you are lucky, they 4-man the dungeon, and if you are unlucky, they just kick you. Point number 3 is time walking should not take route planning, is something we said. Like, you shouldn't have to plan a route for it. Well, I really don't think that this is what will happen. There is a big gap between the level of difficulty of a current time walking and a +3 dungeon. I think that even heroics are a bit too easy because you can simply ignore everything. Of course, you should not wipe a lot in time walking /heroic, but right now you can ignore any mechanic. Then people just jump into +2s and suddenly hit a wall because they have no idea how their characters work and that dungeons do anything. In the WoW Reddit, new players routinely ask about this or why leveling is so boring. Point number 4 is if the new tuning leads to leveling taking longer, then significantly increase the amount of experience rewards. If 5 time walking dungeons take too long, then make it 3 for the weekly cash and reward. But I cannot really see anyone enjoying the current situation of time walking. People only do it for alts, but they actually hate them and the process it takes. My 2 cents, Daniel. So point number 1 for me is the way that people pull time walking dungeons. And it's even mentioned inside this post that the way heroics currently work isn't really effective at teaching people how to play their classes, because this is where my point comes in of heroics right now are pulled like time walking dungeons. If you've done a heroic dungeon lately, typically they are, hey, one tank shows up who may or may not have 30 to 40 item levels, if not 50 item levels on the dungeon they're doing, because they're helping a friend just crush out some dungeons quickly. Or they're doing their quest for the week of doing a particular dungeon. They just queued heroic and they're just smashing it out and pull the dungeon the way this described. They run right up to the first boss, if not into the first boss, pull everything, and just it all gets cleaved down either by the players that are there or just by the tank, because the tank just lives through all of it and cannot die inside of these dungeons because they're just so geared for them. So that's where I go, okay, well, what happens, in my opinion, after heroic? Well, you have mythic zeros. In mythic zeros, they are a step up, but they're also a step up in reward for doing those things. So now you have a reward problem with time walking, where it's not rewarding high enough gear, because it's not rewarding mythic zero gear. It's repeatable. So you can't repeat right now mythic zeros. So I guess that's kind of a trade-off in that, but you can repeat +2s, and +2s still reward higher than time walking. So if you're trying to tune the difficulty of these pulls going through it, this is still focusing mainly on point 1, that if you're trying to tune the difficulties of these pulls, then how are you? What is your benchmark, right? If it isn't +2s and 3s for Mythic Plus, where you actually have to pay attention, learn your class, not pull everything crazy, then what is it? Because I don't know what that is going to end up being, because there's nothing really between doing heroics and Mythic +2s, in my opinion. There's that that is the next logical step between doing those sorts of things that you're doing, and the reward for +2s is champion gear. But you're getting veteran track gear from time walking. You're not even getting the same equivalent of item level or stuff that you're getting. So it just doesn't, to me, that doesn't track, right? There's a problem there that would need to get solved as far as reward goes if you're going to do that. You're also dealing with a knowledge base. And this is something we mentioned last week of, hey, people need to learn mechanics on bosses. Time walking week, you randomly queue into a time walking dungeon. You may never see a dungeon that week. You may never see a dungeon twice that week, which means that in all likelihood, if you're someone who is queuing through time walking, you're not going to have players that are going into it that necessarily have any idea how anything works, which means you are going to need to have people stop and explain something about how a boss works or what's going to happen. You know, if you're talking about, hey, you're going to have to take this mechanic over to that marker, or hey, you're going to have to make sure that we always get this interrupt, or hey, you're going to have to make sure that, you know, whatever it is happens. And so those conversations are going to need to happen when you start scaling up the difficulty of something like this. So I understand the feeling of, oh my God, this is very brain dead. We can just kind of smash our way through time walking dungeons. But I also don't feel like we should lean in the other direction where people actually have to go, I have an interrupt and I need to use an interrupt, and learning that inside time walking because you've wiped 3 times to a boss because no one interrupted. Now, yes, they would learn a lesson, but I don't know if time walking is where you want that lesson being learned. I think +2s and 3s is where you want that lesson being learned, in my opinion. That's where it makes sense to be taking players aside and going, okay, you have a dispel on your character. You need to be dispelling this debuff when it comes out. Oh, I don't even have that on my bar. I didn't know that was a thing. And you might say, hey, maybe they should know that's a thing before they hit max level. Maybe they should, and maybe there should be leveling content that teaches them about dispelling better than they currently have. I don't know if time walking is the place to do that again. I'm just not sure. There aren't always dispels inside time walking dungeons. They'd have to add one to every time walking dungeon and have an explanation as to why it happens. Because you're not necessarily going to hit a time walking dungeon that has dispels in it every time that you run them. So there's that too. So there is absolutely every possibility someone could slip through the cracks and get all the way to max level in 4 hours doing time walking dungeons from wherever they last played the game without learning that. Now, point 2, I'll cover here quickly, which is the lesser geared players. I did a ton of time walking during the anniversary event. This was before they did the recent tuning, twisty, weirdy stuff with not scaling you anymore, right? And I complained a lot about hitting max level on a character and not having the item level to do current content because there was no catch-up gear or anything happening. So I'm not going to revisit that a ton, but I did that a lot. And that was a huge problem then. Where it wasn't a problem was in the dungeons, which to me says the thing they changed, where they made it so that the dungeon no longer scales people down, is the problem, in my opinion. I think they should revert that change. I think they should scale everyone to a certain item level that's applicable to the dungeon and have people run the dungeon. And in that case, you can tune it for a certain item level. If people are too high in item level and you want to really fine tune how difficult pulls are, you can adjust that item level slightly for that dungeon and drop it by 3 item levels. And so now everyone's average of 3 item levels lower than they were before, and suddenly the dungeon gets harder, or dungeon gets easier, whatever way you want to do it as far as shifting that around. That to me would be the better way to tune the whole system overall than doing it this way. This way rewards players for taking gear off, which makes no sense to me. The current method of lesser geared players become more resilient versus damage means that your tank taking off their belt and their cloak makes them take less damage, which doesn't make sense. That makes no sense in a system. So I think that that just needs to get revisited entirely. And that's probably the route of a lot of the complaints that are happening with this is that kind of problem. Because yes, it's difficult to gear up a character as you sort of go through it. But when you're being scaled item level, it didn't matter. You could wear level 10 or 12 gear and you're just being scaled up to wherever that item level is supposed to be. And you're able to perform reasonably well. It made for some weird situations where like someone who's like 20 levels lower than someone else was doing higher damage than that person because of how the scaling system worked. That was happening, but I don't think that was necessarily a big problem in time walking. So I guess that's where like my mind goes with point number 2. And point 3 is just, I revisit point 1 again, which is if time walking should not involve route planning and, you know, the gap between a heroic currently in a +3 dungeon is too large of a gap, so when they move into a +3 dungeon, they're totally caught off guard, then, like, are you talking about raising the difficulty of normals and heroics and mythic zeros so that getting into mythic plus is easier? That's a very different conversation across the board as far as those go, because all of those would have to scale equally up and the rewards would have to scale equally up to make players be more prepared for those +2s and 3s. And I think a lot of the learning for me, if I'm doing any +2s or 3s, I'm assuming I'm going in with players who do not know how to play their class very well. I just assume it across the board. So if we're wiping on a boss, we wipe on a boss because someone missed interrupts. If we're doing, Dark Flame Clef and we're on the boss that you literally have to interrupt or everyone gets feared because the second to last boss that's in there, then yeah, you just go, hey guys, we need to be sure we're hitting these fears. How about so-and-so interrupts the first one and then you do the next one, and then you just rotate that. And then people figure it out after like 1 or 2 pulls, and that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what the early keys are for. That's why they're so forgiving on 2s and 3s when it comes to the timer and everything that's happening with them, right? Because stuff has so much lower item level, so much lower health for your lower item level. So I don't know, that to me is what hits point 3. And then when it comes down to point 4 with the new tuning leads to leveling taking longer to scale it up, I'm 100% with you. I think if they should have a time goal in mind of how long it should take for players to level from X to Y, and if it's not in the right spot, they need to increase the reward. And I'm all down for them reducing the amount of time walking dungeons you run a week from 5, because why do things not line up with the vault? I'm always frustrated with this. Why do I run 5 time walking dungeons for a vault that gives me a reward at 4? That should just be 4. It should just align with the vault. So I'm with you with that one. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on your stuff, Daniel. I feel like the biggest problem with time walking is that they changed it from scaling everyone to a certain item level, which made it way harder to balance. And if they're just going to make things even more difficult, and then we're going to see this be an even weirder system with people removing gear to do time walking, it's going to be a very strange situation. If people have time walking sets that are like low item level speed gear is what they're running for their time walking, that's going to be very strange to have people do that. But it's possible that can happen.
We've seen that in the past too, where there was like pocket weird gear that, in the old time walking scaling system. Eventually they would like kind of just nuke individual pieces of gear, or they'd retune stuff or whatever. But
there were trinkets that were just broken. There were trinkets that just were broken to use in time walking. People would just hang on to them. Yep.
Yeah. There was stuff like that for sure. Daniel, thanks for writing in. I think your email is really good, and it lays out like a lot of just player dissatisfaction with time walking as a whole right now. I 100% agree with the like in the first sentence where you say pending proper tuning, and that's really what it all comes down to. I think there's a lot of potential for them to whiff on this tuning, at least out of the gate, and it's amplified a bit by the fact that it's coming in at the same time as Turbulent Time Waste comes back, where we have this really cool reward that everybody's going to want, right? The Infinite Pirate Dragon. Yeah, the timing is going to be weird, and if the tuning doesn't feel good, then that's a lot of time walking we're going to have to slog through for really no other reward than a mount. And that sort of, I think, like, when I really think about this, time walking is maybe the poster child for the problem with WoW's sort of obsession with the weekly cadence right now. Like, your individual play session really doesn't matter because all you're doing is a thing for like a meta reward for how much you did this week, or like an individual time walking dungeon at max level doesn't matter. You're only doing it for that box after the 5th one, right? There is a problem with that, and that is why people want to rush through these kinds of things, because you're either leveling or you're trying to get your 5th dungeon done for the week for your champ box or your hero box during Turbulent, right? So maybe, Daniel kind of imagines if they take too long, make it 3 dungeons. I think the same thing applies to leveling and stuff. If they take longer, then they should reward more XP. I would say you could go as far as like make it just 1 then. Make it 1 dungeon for the weekly, because then the queue won't be full of people who are just trying to rush through it to get their boxes, right? Like, I think some of the reward structure that time walking exists as a part of really fuels the player dissatisfaction problems. It's full of high level people who are just fishing for an Eye of Kazan or whatever, right? Like, literally, that's what people are doing in there. So I think that those people have a much different goal in terms of their experience inside the time walking dungeon than somebody who is leveling up a new spec and trying to get a feel for how it plays in a group in a low pressure situation, or maybe just hit max level and is trying to kind of work out the timings on how things work or what it looks like in combat. Time walking is, I just don't think it's the venue for that, especially considering you may only see a time walking dungeon once every 3 months with the rotation that we have. So it is tough. I mean, I myself, I stopped doing heroic dungeons in match made situations for daily bonuses or whatever years ago, because people treat tanks like a bot. If you're not doing what's being described, in terms of the pulling cadence, people get mad at you.
They pull for you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they just run ahead of you and pull it anyway.
Yeah.
Whether you have buttons ready or not, or whether you are ready to pull stuff, by and large, I just stopped doing it because I felt like I was getting abused in match-made queues, really. I mean, I agree that – I also agree with the overarching point that, the gearing situation in time walking is bizarre. I'm not sure that I think even though I hated getting templated and getting my stats messed up, getting squished down to the level of the dungeon that I was doing, I think was just better.
Yep.
It's a level playing field for everybody, and it makes it easier for Blizzard to control the experience. And having a thing where now you have to weigh should I make a low item level set? I mean, you should still do more damage if you have higher gear, right? Theoretically. So you probably don't want to take gear off specifically just because you'll live longer, because you're probably not taking any damage anyway, unless the tuning is all out of whack.
Yeah.
This is part of my trepidation about these changes is that, until we can really get a feel for it, we don't know. And the thing about route planning, I mean, a lot of these dungeons do have straightforward routes, the ones in the time walking pools and stuff, and I don't think that Blizzard is going to shoot for a +2 or a +3 in terms of difficulty, but the gap between, like you mentioned, the gap between time walking and heroic dungeons is already pretty narrow, so there's some room to move, but not a whole lot. And dude, I remember the days when time walking was brand new and you'd get the curse of queuing into a pit of Sauron, and good luck, man. You might be in there for 45 minutes, and you might cycle through 8 or 9 or 10 different people in the queue because they didn't know how any of the bosses worked. They couldn't figure out how to follow the route around the dungeon. I mean, Pit of Sauron's not in the pool right now and hopefully never comes back. But, it's just too complicated for a dungeon that maybe somebody's never done before and maybe will never do again, just realistically, right? Wait
until Atal'Dazar gets in there, buddy. There's going to be a few runs that have very different routes. We get BFA in here. It's going to be every 4 months once we get BFA into the pool.
Something these pretty close to that, yeah. And, if they keep it once every 3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be something that means that, hey, we have really diverse choice directions people can go and bosses people can do, and someone queues into that and walks into a bad pack of little raptor ads or the fearing pterodactyls or whatever it is, and suddenly you're like, oh man, everything's all over the place. Try have fun doing spider boss on time walking with full mechanics. It's going to be real fun. I don't man.
Yeah. I mean, these are just things that comparatively, Pit of Sauron is a simple dungeon, but for that kind of match-made experience, it was very punishing when it was new in time walking, and I think that might be part of the reason why it got rotated out of the pool. So I think if they do increase the difficulty to any point where the tank can't just pull an entire hallway to the boss, that then you are going to have boss wipes, especially with modern dungeons and boss mechanics and things like that. And I mean, I guess my thought is I already don't do time walking very much. And if this is going to be a miserable experience because I'm having to shepherd an uninitiated group through a dungeon and teach them how to do bosses every time, then I'm just not going to do it at all, basically. So it's a tough call. I mean, the leveling thing, it's just been such a great vehicle for leveling for so many years, but I don't know. So maybe you take that part out of the equation. Maybe it doesn't grant XP, and so you just keep those players out of it. I don't know. Maybe you just you try to narrow down the audience that time walking is appealing to people that just want to be in there, actually experiencing those dungeons and aren't there for some higher level, meta level reward of I want my 5th because I want my box, or I want to level this character up so I can go do something else, right? If neither one of those types of players have a reason to queue into it, then maybe you can have this experience that's more not like playing the dungeons in content, but more similar to it. Just more, okay, we're going to pull deliberately, we're going to pay attention to these boss mechanics. We're not going to do anything that would have been like extremely dangerous to do at the time the dungeon was new. But how long are you waiting in queue? Like, I feel like the draw is those two ends of the spectrum, right? I'm here to get quick XP. I'm here to get 5 done quick so I can get my box. I don't know. I mean, maybe part of this might be maybe time walking should be a more robust feature overall. Maybe it should be available more frequently, or maybe it should be you should be able to access the dungeons like whenever, but only sometimes does it give the meta reward. So then on those off weeks, like people who just want to do it as a low stakes way, or they really like a particular expansion's dungeons or whatever, and that's what they want to play on their tune. But again, what do the queues look like for that? So I don't know, man. It's I think Daniel raises a lot of really good points. I'm not looking for getting something out of time walking that's similar to I think what a player like Daniel is looking to get out of it. I am there to just go get done for the week, get this character level, get my box, whatever. So that is my perspective, and I feel like what they're talking about is probably going to make me disengage from time walking even more than I have over the years. So we'll see. It's hard to know. Like right now, without seeing it, it's hard to know. But what they presented makes me go, this seems painful. I do think changes are necessary to the system, but I don't know if we want to inflict pain.
Well, so I think you hit something that I would be interested in a little bit, which is them narrowing the amount of player base that it appeals to try and help with some of the problem. And that might be something like, essentially, as you mentioned, like maybe just one run to get the actual reward that people want to get. But will that actually solve the problem, or will the people queuing into it be like, oh, I just had a really hard run followed by a run where someone just dumpstered it, followed by a really hard run, followed by a run where someone just dumpstered it, based off who's getting into your queues, right? And you'll probably have more frustration generated because you'll have a mixture of both types of people dumped into it, and you'll have that thing where you might have a really undergeared tank for what they're doing who's leveling up and learning, with DPS that are just like, please pull faster, I'm going to pull things on top of you constantly, which happens currently, but that might happen even more with narrowing that field. I don't know. Like it's a tricky thing to manage. I know for myself, like you're saying, I would disengage with this. If it becomes like +2s and +3s and it's going to take me 45 minutes or 30 minutes to do a time walking run, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in that content. That is not content that I want to spend time in at all. If we look back and look at some of the dungeons right now, some of them, just because of the size of the dungeon, like Pit of Sauron is a really good example, is one where it would have just taken you 25 minutes or 20 minutes just to run through that in a really fast pace, because it's just a very large space with a lot of pulls. And even if you're mass pulling those pulls, you're still taking a long time to get through the space. And so I don't have an interest with time walking being a key feature, I guess, to WoW content that involves me spending hours of my time in a week doing it. I already struggle enough with the Mythic Zero runs when it's like run 5 Mythic Zeros a week, or 5 Mythic Plus a week, or 4 Mythic Plus in a week. Like that, those I just save for Keystones. Because it used to be, I'd be like, yeah, let's just get in and just run a bunch of zeros and this will take, 45 minutes and I'll be done. But even those have now been scaled to a point where you're not seeing as much of the mass pulling happening as you used to see with those Keystones. And so like I just wait to actually do an actual Keystone run to contribute towards my vault, as opposed to just knocking out my my 4 for the week or whatever it was to get the reward that I wanted to get from it. So yeah, overall, like I said, great points. It's a definitely different perspective, and it's one that I certainly support, in the sense of everyone wants something different from the game. So people who want time walking to be the thing they do every week whenever it comes around, and that's something that they run, dozens of a week, and they're getting all the rewards and they're buying stuff off the vendors. I understand you don't want this to just be a monotonous, mindless activity. Like I respect that. I don't know where that gap is. And I really don't think Time Walking Dungeons should ever be a tool to teach people how to play their character. I just don't. Just because it's not a consistent enough experience. I think the best way for someone to learn how to play World of Warcraft is to repeat the same task over and over again, for them to drill in the muscle memory of what they're supposed to do in certain keystones. We see that with all of our keystone dungeons that are out every single season. People get better and better and better at them and push higher and higher and higher keystones by doing the same things over and over and over again. And that's how they learn how to do those things. And so to introduce a random variable in where it's like, hey, it could be one of these 6 dungeons, you don't know, every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whenever, BFA comes out, that's not going to help people learn how to play their class in that situation. It just doesn't, in my opinion, help comparatively to, hey, here's a pool of dungeons, you're going to run them for months and figure out how to play your class in those. You'll see people learn, these are the spells I interrupt. These are the things I need to have a disruption for or a stun for. These are the things I need to not stand in. These are the things I need to... And there's things Blizzard can do to telegraph those things better, and it certainly seems like their team's working in that direction to try and accomplish that. They're not there yet. So to me, that's currently the best way to learn WoW, is to go, hey, give them a set dungeon pool, let them do repeatable tasks. This is how it's worked since day one with, learning how to fight raid bosses, learning how to fight dungeon bosses, is you do the same thing. You see the fight multiple times and you get better each time you see it, and you just do multiple pulls, and that is what it is.
Yeah, true. And also, like, we talk all the time about how class design goes hand in hand with encounter design, and like current dungeons are designed to take advantage of and test your current class's designs to some degree. I mean, it's obviously sometimes they do a better job of it than others, but the old content is so much more simple than the new content. Burning Crusade dungeons are like, okay, the boss has a mechanic, and this pack has like one mob in it that casts a thing that you better react to. So you have like more tools than you really realistically need. I mean, the biggest thing that I think here, I mean, Daniel, again, like, thanks for writing in. I think like you provided a lot of great things for us to dig into here, and I think you bring a great perspective on this. And again, I'm just looking for a different thing out of the experience, I guess. But I think time walking, really what it comes down to is at the crossroads of a lot of these sort of overarching like problems with WoW. They're not big problems, but they're, I think Blizzard has a bit of a, I don't know, what would you say, like an identity crisis, or like, I don't think they know what they want the time walking experience to be like. Right. Yeah. And then you tie it in with the problem of, we just have these more and more like nested systems of do this week. Oh, you only have to do it this week. This is what, you get rewarded for doing stuff over the course of the week. Time walking is tied in with all that weekly cadence stuff, which then, influences people to blast through it. I think all those things combined to like, well, you have this thing that everybody is bringing different expectations to, or is participating in for different reasons, but nobody's really happy with it. And Blizzard hasn't really done anything like this with time walking in years, right? Like, it's sort of just been there. It's kind of ticking away. It doesn't really get a lot of attention. And so what is its place really in the overall landscape of the game? And I would like to hear that directly in blue text about what they think that is, because players obviously like bring all different types of perspectives to it, different types of reasons why they're participating in the content. And I think it's in a weird place, and it's when did it come in? Second year of Pandaria, I want to say 2013 is when it first came in. I used to make sure that I did it every week, man, like, because I needed badges, I needed the vendor rewards. Now, obviously, like, I bought all those after a while, so. But now there's all new ones, and I need a ton more badges. But now, like, I don't want to do this anymore, because there's other things that are more fun for me to do in the game, and this is like impinging on my time to do that. Plus, you have negative experiences in time walking queues. I mean, I don't know. I guess I would say it's not fun to be the tank who's rushing through it either. You feel like you're racing against your DPS's patience. It's a wider problem with World of Warcraft than just anything with time walking specifically. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how this all feels, because maybe it's just okay. Like, maybe we start up Turbulent Timeways in .7 with the new tuning, and it's like, oh yeah, well, this boss was alive for 75 seconds instead of 30 seconds, but it had a bigger health pool. We had to like kick this thing a couple times. It was fine. There's probably space where they get to that without it being like a full on, like, we need to be on comms. We need people knowing what they're actually doing in here. There's space, but it's a real balancing act. So yeah, the proper tuning is the number one thing that we have to lock in to like adjust the system.
Yeah, and obviously Daniel makes a very good point of proper tuning pending, because we just don't know what this is going to feel like. And as you said, Blizzard needs to communicate that on some level, other than just saying generically they're going to be harder. Like, that doesn't making something more difficult doesn't necessarily communicate what's actually going to be happening with them. And as you said, we're going to get quite the dose of what this is going to feel like once we get turbulent time waves kicking in. So people are going to feel with whatever you're going to see what it's like. I'll just say that if I'm wiping in time walking on my main character, I am going to be disappointed with the tuning of time walking. I don't think it should be something like it should be tourist mode, in my opinion. You are there to experience old content and see what old content was like. This is like, Chen is Stormstout is telling a story, and you are revisiting and reliving the story that he is telling. The story shouldn't have, and then the heroes died. The end in the middle of it. It's just that shouldn't be part of the story, right? You should be able to get through the whole thing. So I don't know, that's kind of where my mind is at with time walking. And obviously people differ in different areas, but yeah, that's where we're at. I do want to take a moment now to thank our patrons because they contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Giving a special shout out today to Arajian, Bradley, Chris, James, Garrett, Kapawi, Max, and Shorel. Thank you so much for all that you give towards the Patreon. It means a lot. We appreciate it. Helps keep the lights on and the bills paid and the servers up and the, stuff hosted and all those sorts of fun things. And these episodes happen every week. So we thank you very much for that. If you're someone who wants to join our Patreon and support the show, you can go over to patreon.com/thestartingzone and become a patron over there. No new patrons this week, but thank you again to all of our patrons, both past and present.
Absolutely. Thank you, patrons. We couldn't do without you, literally. So thank you for the support. And we can't thank you enough. It's been so long that we've been at this, and that's, that you've been with us on and off, or some people have been there from pretty much the beginning of launching the thing, or, to people who've signed up more recently. Every little bit helps keep us, going with the show and keep the archives online and keep stuff out there for you to listen to every week. So thanks a lot.
Yeah. With that, that's going to wrap up episode 685 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. You can also leave us a 5-star review over on your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, your Spotify. We always appreciate those as well. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback, you can email us a question at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or tweet to us on Twitter at The Starting Zone, or on Blue Sky at thestartingzone.bsky.social, or you can join our Discord server by going to thestartingzone.com/Discord and join our Discord server over there. Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me on socials. You can go to Twitter. I'm over there at Shieldwald, and also on Blue Sky at jlucas.bsky.social. I do check both sites regularly, so feel free to say hi in either place. Video channels are twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Quiet. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be streaming this week or not. I haven't streamed in a while. The whole streaming thing got derailed when I got sick a couple months ago and just never got back on the train. So I don't know. Just check it out. You can subscribe and get notifications or whatever if I pick it up. I've been having fun doing some retro streams lately, but that's like if I have a free night, with nothing going on, which when does that ever happen for me? But, it could happen. So that's where you would find it.
Trying to find me, you can find me on Blue Sky at spencerhd.bsky.social, over on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or on youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.